to the Nelson Climate Action Group that works with iwi, schools, communities to identify and address issues that are affecting the future regarding the Wairarapa moana and agriculture. Move to alternative pesticides for our playgrounds and community spaces, and an immediate solution to the fenced-in wastewater treatment plant that it is about to address in its effluent discharges, and to finish the Featherstone Town Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Unfortunately, we've gone over 5 minutes, so there are no opportunity for questions. Thank you, Claire. I now call Heather Ritchie, submission number 65. Yep, yeah. So Heather, you have 5 minutes. We will bang it down to 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you to the teams at Council and for review for all the information that's been presented. I've not made a submission before, so bear with me.
You're all right.
You've stated in the material that one of your biggest challenges is roading. It's past underinvestment, it's future population growth, and the increased safety needs of our roads. In the same report, we've proposed to stop rural road sealing to help pay for important water maintenance and renewals, which is stated as a higher priority. This suggests that rural residents and their safety have been compromised to pay for services that they don't receive or gain very little benefit from. The July 2019 move to Fulton Hogan has reduced costs, which is admirable. This doesn't offer any context around the level of quality that's now being delivered by that contractor. My understanding from residents on the Tora Road is that the roading quality has significantly reduced. That's certainly been my experience when visiting family out there. The after the subdivision alone has added 24 new residential sites. Locals can count at least 15 boats using the road on a summer weekend. There's a marked increase to the traffic volume, and the poor maintenance quality has created quite a hazardous trip about areas key visitor attractions. The residents of the Ruakura-Petuna Road tell a similar story. Quality has decreased, and the hugely popular Petuna Chasm attracts many visitors, achieving one of Council's key outcomes, being a place of destination. I'm told the accidents on the Ruakura-Petuna Road are more serious than those on Tora. That perhaps it's not if but when they're involved in an accident. Who bears the cost of accidents? These residents are not safe and optimistic in their community. I don't see the cost to maintain gravel roads compared against the cost to seal them. The impact is stated as one of the 261 kilometres of unsealed roads. Given that the long-term plan is next reviewed in 3 years, the impact is surely at least 3 kilometres. Many of these roads service areas of high value to our local economy: farming, fishing, tourism. I suggest the impact is far greater than the simplistic and perhaps misleading table. I do commend Council's Wheels Park and Greytown development and think the proposed location has merit. I hope to see the costed concept continue to be shared publicly. I think you'll receive a lot of interest and support, and perhaps enthusiasm for fundraising if the allocated $1 million isn't sufficient to make the space amazing and suitable for many years ahead. The reasoning for closing the recycle station in Greytown seems light. Where's the environmental commitment in this proposal? I use the facility. I'm rural, so I pay for my own rubbish collection, but there's no rural recycling service available, paid, unpaid, just not. I can place gardening rubbish within my own property, but I appreciate how useful the service is to urban residents for their gardening waste. The risk of roadside dumping and the associated costs of cleaning this up, and the environmental impact of users travelling an additional 27 to 44 kilometres, which is the round trip, to recycle their items seems to far outweigh the suggested gains of closing the facility. And I feel sad to think that many will simply dump their recycling instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Councillors, do you have any questions? Thank you very much.
That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just checking our next submission from Mark Kitcher is on Zoom, but we're not seeing him. In the absence, we'll see if he pops back up. I don't know if Dale and Jason and Rachel are here yet. You are? Are you able to do your presentation a few minutes early, or would you like to wait for more people to arrive?
Jason said last night he's going to try and make it, so I don't want to sort of.
We'll just have a bit of a pause because you're due at 9:29, so in 7 minutes. That's fine. Guys, if you just want to relax for a bit.
Talk among ourselves. Talk among ourselves. No, we're on Zoom.
Mark can't make it, he's on another phone call at work, so we'll see if we can reschedule him later on in the day. There's a couple of cancellations.
So we're on to Dale and Lynn, are we?
Yeah.
Yep.
Grab a seat.
Hello, guys.
As you know, we got 5 minutes, and we'll bang again at 4 minutes just to wrap it. But if you could leave as much time for questions, we do have your submission in front of us.
Yep. As you know, we live at Piccadilly Road, which is classified flood zone. We've got 10-acre blocks up there. Wally, Jason Hall, my neighbour, he wants to do the same. We want about 1.5 to 5 acres. The flood zone, because it's real special, it comes under flood zone. Got to be 10 acres and something else about another house. Our issues with the flood zone, according to the Waihini Action Group, the council seems to be running off the Greater Wellington Regional Council flood maps, where the Waihini Action Group, their flood maps are quite a bit different. We will still be in the flood zone, but not as bad as what the Wellington Regional Council has put us down as. The second thing is, I'm a builder. I build a house. All around us are smaller blocks, like all on the main road. They're all smaller blocks. We're stuck with 10 acres. Across the road at Pinehaven Orchards, I just built a house in there. That's flood zone. There's no issue with that. There is ways around that flood zone, and we're happy to work with whatever ways we make it happen. The way we're looking at it is the Wellington Regional Council numbers are wrong compared to the Waihini Group, and that's what we're working on. We believe that 2 5-acre blocks where they don't go on infrastructure, they get their own water on septic tanks, so there's no impact on Greytown at all. So we're just asking if we can put a submission in for a subdivision down to 2 5-acre blocks. I shot some laser, I'm a builder. I shot some laser heights from Jason Hall's house out to his paddock where the building site would be. There's 200 mils difference in his house site to the ground level of where Jason Hall's is. I then went over to my place and I shot laser shots of my section. Mine range from 100 to 200 mils difference, my house site to where the building site would be in that paddock. In 2016, I relocated a house into that same zone and I was allowed to do it. And that's right, I'm just having trouble understanding why I was allowed to do that. And yet 150, 50 metres down the paddock, it's only 100 mils difference. I can't put a house there. That's what we're having trouble understanding, given that all the houses around us are in smaller blocks. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's basically what we're trying to get across to you guys is we want 2 5-acre blocks. They'll be self-sufficient, no impact on infrastructure. And admittedly, they will be in the flood zone, but not as bad. See, at 100 to 150 mils down the paddock where the house is, if that house is 800 out the ground, mine's only 500 out the ground. So if that house floods, I'm going to be underwater anyway. And yet I was allowed to do that 5 years ago. I understand the rules are changing as things progress. But, we just like the opportunity to subdivide down to 5 acres. A couple of reasons behind it. One is we've got kids that want to go to university. That's going to help us pay for those costs. And basically it's our retirement package, basically. So that's what we wanted to put across to you guys. But we are working on the Waihangi action group numbers. So.
Great, thanks, Dale. And before we open up, and I know it can be sometimes, different plans, but I think this is more of a spatial plan submission. So we've changed the tag it as a spatial plan submission. But it's still valid, just to let you know, because that's to do with zoning. And what I'm getting out of this is that we'd like the Greater Wellington Regional Council floodplain restrictions to be reviewed for accuracy and relevance. And we have had this previously being raised with regards to 100-year-old plans that aren't necessarily relevant. So would that be a fair call that we need to look at Greater Wellington's restrictions on council zoning and whether or not they're still applicable?
Yeah, I don't see it be a problem. But like I go back to the issue was 5 years ago I was allowed to do it. That's the part that I'm having trouble understanding. When did this 1 in 100 thing come in?
About 4 years ago, I would say, moved it in there. Just before we.
Cool. So we've got any quick, just quickly, councillors, do you have any other questions? We've got 4 there. No. So what I'd like to do as well out of this is contact you and get you to have a meeting with our planners and talk through this, unless you already have. And we
kind of have, and me and Lynn, we came in just before Christmas Day, and we made an appointment to see someone at the planning. The appointment had been forgotten, so they just sent out this lady, and all she did was read off what it says in the district plan. And said, it's no good to us. It's like,
Yeah, I think Alice is.
Just very quickly now, Alice, time.
You're on the action group with the new mapping. So
sorry,
you're on the any floodplain action group? Did you say?
No, I've been following.
Oh right. So
I'm not on it. No.
Okay. So
no.
John Boone came around and showed me the new mapping, and my understanding is they're very close to getting Greater Wellington to agree to the new mapping.
Yeah.
So once that occurs, then the questions you're asking will then be raised again, obviously, because the new floodplains will be shown in that new mapping. So it's just that's the process more than anything else.
So we might continue this conversation outside of this hearing. Now, thank you very much for your time. And we'll be in touch regarding possibly having a conversation, but your submission still stands. So you've raised some good issues.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Melissa, submission number 346.
Cheers, guys.
Melissa De Souza Correa.
Korea.
Yes, apologies for that mouthful. Good morning. Could I also, because my husband Bertie Silver was going to speak directly after me.
Yep.
And he is unable to be here, so we've put a composite one, so it will probably run slightly over my time, but then you'll have.
That's fine. You're speaking two-person submission on.
Yeah. Well, so we've done it as a combination. Our submission is particularly related to rural roads, and in particular focused on the Ruakaka-Tuna Road. But I think the same issues apply also to the Tora Road, where you have rural roads that are now having a lot of increased people living there and increased internal tourism, which means that they have become very high use roads and are not fit for purpose as they were in the past. I'd like to really thank this council for the 1.2 kilometres that they've already done on the Ruakaka-Petuna Road. It's made a real difference to those of us that live there. And in particular, didn't kind of bow to convention and just seal the first part of the road, which would possibly be the normal thing to have done. But we actually feel that it would make the road even more dangerous, because the first part of the road is wide and straight, and it would encourage people to go up the road. And actually, the road is really dangerous. It has become very dangerous. Yeah, I think if the first part, it's kind of false advertising unless the rest of the road is sealed, and that's really what there needs to be a focus on. We've lived up this road since 1997, so 24 years. We are 8 kilometres from the White Road turn-off. We were, when we first moved in, the 8th house up the road, and hardly anyone that lived on the Blue Rock Road really used the Ruakaka-Petuna Road. But now the population since 97 has well more than quadrupled, and is going to continue because there's a hell of a lot of subdivisions that have gone through that people have not built on yet. And for the first 10 years, the road was fine. It was graded every 4 weeks. The drains were cleared. There were regular top-ups of gravel. You never saw the base core. The base core, you know, the lumpy hard road underneath, you never saw it. There were very few corrugations or potholes and no sign of the bedrock. During these 24 years, there was no new seal except for a very tiny piece outside Rex Thomas's parents' place, and that was done because of dust going into their home. For the last sort of 14 years, increasingly, the council has received complaints from residents about the state of the road. The amount of maintenance fell off, but hugely the amount of use increased. The vineyard was established, many workers coming in over several months. The Petuna Chasm has just steadily increased in population every year, and increasing population up the valley and on Blue Rock Road, multiple subdivisions. The last 3 years, we had very heavy use of the forestry harvesting where all the roads were put in, so massive amounts of heavy trucks going up and down, and the maintenance just didn't even remotely keep up with it. And right from the beginning, when we complained to council, we really kind of got a deaf ear, and we, at one point, council put in a traffic counter because we were explaining that, look, there's really increased population, and they put it in the winter time when there were no chasm traffic and there was no vineyard traffic. So then said, oh no, there's not a big increase in traffic. But it really didn't, all of us using the road saw this increase happening and started to see many vehicles coming off the side of the road. Despite getting so many residents putting in complaints, we then started seeing things like Tamuna Road being sealed and Shooting Butts Road being sealed, where they were straight, safe roads that didn't have the usage that the Ruakaka-Petuna Road and I imagine the Tora Road gets. And finally, someone in council said, oh, you have to apply under the annual plan to get funding, which we got together as a community and did, and Alistair, who's in the back, put the submission forward, and we got approval for basically most of the Ruakaka-Petuna Road to be sealed over a 3-year period, which and then COVID delayed it a bit, but we got this bit, and there have not been more accidents on this new bit of road that has been sealed. So whereas there were regular fall-offs the roads, there haven't been on that bit of seal. So we were really felt like the rug had been taken from under our feet when it was announced that with this long-term plan that you no longer wanted to continue sealing the Royal Cockapatoona Road. And that you were only going to focus on health and safety concerns. Now, really, I think that is what the council should be focused on, is health and safety concerns. An arbitrary 1 kilometre per year is not relevant. And if it's been applied to roads that it's not essential, then you know, it's a waste. But the Royal Cockapatoona Road is not a waste. It's really a health and safety concern. I've spoken to both Kim Lace from Ace Panel and Paint, who is a tow and salvage operator, and also John at South Wairarapa Tow and Salvage in Featherston. They both highlight that road as being dangerous. They are up our road multiple times per year. John says he's up here every 2 or 3 weeks, and far more so in the summer. Kim Lace more than half a dozen times a year, and he's had people that have been helicoptered out. They feel very much that there's a huge risk of fatality on the road, because it's not a matter of those people going off into a nice flat bit of road. They don't go off on the straights, they go off on the bends, and they go over the banks, and there's a sharp drop off down. In many cases it's 20 metres drop down to the river. And there's been so many near misses where they've just been caught by a tree or something, you know, and if the car had gone off, 30 centimetres another way, it would have plummeted to the river below. So I really want to ask the council how many accidents are acceptable to you? How do you feel about 8,000 visitors, which is now where we're up to with the chasm, using the road each year, each summer, over a 5-month period? And that's a return visit. There's bus loads full of children that go up to the chasm. There's a school bus. And no one from the council that I'm aware of, has come to one of our locals and said, take us up the road, show us the hotspots. When we put a press release out to the Wairarapa Times Age, within half an hour I had a call from a reporter, and she came out and we drove up and down the road. Any one of us that live up that road can show you the hotspots. And we're talking multiple accidents here. We're not talking just the odd one. So to me and to my husband and to the community, what needs to be done is that the sealing of the bendy, windy bits of the road desperately need to be sealed particularly from the southern end of the new seal that you've just put in over the last summer until the Blue Rock turnoff. And then there are 2 other very high risk areas on the Haurangi Road within the first 3 kilometres of the Haurangi Road, which is just a continuation from the Royal Cockapatoona Road. But until you've done that, there's no signage. For the new bit of seal that you've put in, it goes straight onto a corner, a downhill corner when you're heading up the road. There's no sign that says it's about to turn into gravel. So, and if you don't know the road, you don't really see it, particularly on dusk. My daughter was driving behind another car, and they absolutely lost it because they were travelling too fast. They hit the gravel, they put the brakes on because they don't know about gravel, and then they spin out. And if another car, she said, if another car had been coming around the corner, it would have been a really bad accident. And these sorts of near misses just happen all the time. So you need a lot of signage up there until that's done. It should be a sign at the beginning of the road that says it's a high accident area. And that to reduce speed and to keep left, because the corrugations, the constant corrugations and potholes mean that everybody drives to avoid them, which means driving in the middle of the road. There's a hotspot at the top of the hill by the Royal Cockapatoona Hall. If you're heading into town, you basically, there's an enormous pothole that goes between the gravel where it turns to the tar seal. It's on a brow of the hill. If you drive to avoid the pothole, which I have damaged my car really badly by driving through it, you are absolutely facing oncoming traffic who are going fast uphill. And then on Haringi Road at the 1.5, the Ruatuna corner, it's a curving right-hand bend. It's the only bend that you have after we complained, put in a 30k sign, 30k speed limit on it. My father, who has driven since he was 8 years old, when he was 80, had an accident on that. So first accident he has had in his entire driving life, and he's been a driving instructor. He's driven buses all over the world, many rural roads.
Lisa,
Yeah.
we've had a 10-minute, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, there are no room for questions, but if you could possibly forward us a transcript of what you're going to continue,
Yeah.
so that we can see that as well, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
And I will send you a list of all those hotspots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has Luther arrived? Okay, submission 682 doesn't look like it's here, but just to perhaps if we can jump, I noticed that Claire Blinkley's submission with regards to the Fencing Review Board, submission number 671. Claire, are you able to jump spots to the deli?
Oh, here's,
Oh, no.
here's Luther now.
Luther, come straight on it. So this is Luther Talar, submission number 68.
Luther.
Luther, you've got 5 minutes, and if you could leave, we'll give you a gavel knock if we've got a minute left. But we do have your submission. If you can talk to it, we'll leave time for questions. Would be fantastic.
Thank you, Bishop Mayor and Councillors. My name is Luther Talar on behalf of a newly formed an organisation born out of COVID-19, Pacifica Wairarapa. It covers the catchment of the Marsden District Council, South Wairarapa District Council, as well as Carson District Council. Effectively, what happened, Pacifica got left behind during the recovery phase. And as a result, I was tasked to do a review of it as to what happened. So, born out of that is a Pacifica Wairarapa Council. I'm the current chair, interim chair, but we also filed for a charitable trust status, whereby we are looking at forming a wraparound matrix of services. One of the biggest lessons we learned from it was that Pacifica has got unique issues in the Wairarapa. And one of the myths that you folks need to be aware of is that to catch Pacifica, not necessarily guarantee of Pacifica, more than 50% of Pacifica do not belong to those organisations or go to church. Hence, the issue we had was trying to find and locate these people during the COVID-19 recovery phase. As it turned out, they were the most vulnerable because they didn't have access to folks. So we're waiting for Charities Commission to ratify our deed. And as I said, it's a wraparound services of all services. What we found during the review was that agencies were good at gatekeeping exercises, cherry picking exercises, rather than looking at the whole holistic issues. To deal with Pacifica, you don't deal with the individual, you deal with the family. And that's the core issue, that the problem that we have in terms of service providers. So that's what we're looking at. And then encapsulate issues right around, including immigration. You know that the South Wairarapa, almost on an annual basis, you have over 150 RSC workers here, significant contributors to the economy. From the Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, the Fijians. Fijians are mainly in the forestry, and then Vanuatu, Solomon Islands. Vanuatu's are more in the vineyards, but the Solomon Islands are around the orchards, and that our orchards in the main. So we work very close with those. In fact, straight after this meeting with RSC workers, the JR orchards, with the managers there. So what we're asking is that central government has provided some startup funding for us that promise us that, So they're in the process, we're in the process of negotiating that. And we're using the Marsden District Councils as the umbrella body because currently we're not a legal entity. So all the stuff is big. And also the Marsden District Council on your behalf is giving me that logistical and admin support for the time being. So we're asking respectfully to South Wairarapos to support financial support commitment of $30,000 over the next 3 years. That's $10,000 annually to support this project from here on. That's in brief what I'm asking for on behalf of the Pacifica or Wairarapa. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Lisa, if I could start, councillors, and then pass on to you. Can you give us an idea of the transient versus permanent population of Pacifica in the South Wairarapa in particular?
That we all know, one of the first things I did was try to get a census from all agencies and that, but nobody, as the issue we had is that nobody wanted to part with their data and that nobody. To get to the family, for instance, I think there are 18 families we managed to find on our own in Featherston. I think to 8 in Mount Burra and about the same number in Greytown, all through just our network, just bringing people around. And those were the families we delivered to. Almost on a weekly basis, we're delivering just under the 1/4 tonne food to the RSC workers because initially at that stage, all 96 were stuck here until half were taken up by the contract in Gisborne. But for those 4 weeks from late April to mid-March, those folks were here before the government subsidy came out. They had no support whatsoever in a sense. And it was only later on, late March, that the government came out with this subsidy of non-citizen New Zealanders. But in the meantime, they were required to work, well, those that could work, try to get some alternative work with the Marsden District Council of work, but they were still required to pay rent in that. 2018 census was a waste of time. Everybody knows it was a joke in that, so there was absolutely no data. So one of the first things we are looking at employing 2 varsity students during the break is to complete a comprehensive census of Pacifica in the Wairarapa. So, but I would say, and can I say this, Pacifica Wairarapa includes all the Filipinos. I know there are at least, according to the Filipino community, 500 Filipinos in the Wairarapa, mainly in the apiary and industry and the building and logging industry. You look around, I mean, you will know there'll be 500. But I would suspect, either roughly, you're looking at 3,500 to 4,000 PIs Pacifica in the Wairarapa, roughly, and that's. But I need the good base data to start off with.
Sorry, councillors, I used up all the time on my question. Thank you very much. We do appreciate. I attended your Pacifica phone and saw the work you're doing there. So it's a very interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Claire. So this is submission number 671 on behalf of the Featherston Community Board.
Okay, so I presume you have read all of these. It was one of the submission forms on this paper. So I'm just going to highlight some of the concerns. They came from discussion with people in our town, as well as the community meeting on the long-term spatial plan. So in option 1, we did support option 1. However, we did have some people were saying if it's going to cost a lot of money to delay any upgrades, we should actually look at that and maybe put or get funding to for option 2, which is increase the capital at a time when we can get cheaper money. So we are concerned in the fact that it did look like in this plan there was a lot of robbing Peter or stopping Peter doing something to pay Paul to do something else, and it was sort of a balancing act. So that was in, we totally supported the stormwater upgrades that are going to go towards Featherston, because we are highly concerned over the delay in the wastewater treatment plant solutions for us, which we do feel very concerned that the process that council has stepped in and stopped rather than carried on with the consultation with our community. I just noticed, and this just came up when I was talking with our board about to bring up, we are concerned that we as a community boards are not being consulted enough about their communities, e.g. something like the Māori wards and things like that. We feel that we didn't even know it was on the agenda. We felt that we could have consulted with our community and given some kind of indication from our community about what they wanted on Māori wards. We also, sorry, I'm just going through this. We also did say that the Featherston people were okay with not increasing the funding for the extra kilometre due to the cost. However, I am very, very aware after listening to one of the speakers before me that there are some very, very serious problems with the roading out, say, to White Rock and the more rural roads. So as you will see in our submission, we did say that the rural roads were not in the meeting. That was not, their views were not represented. So I think that we have two demographics here that the council needs to fully consider. We did feel that the berming, we were happy to say council didn't need to mow the berms as long as they took into account the people who may not have lawn mowers or may be unable to mow their lawns due to their health, their disabilities or whatever. So we do feel that that needs to be taken into account, and if need be, funding put aside to maybe community boards to support those people in their communities that are not able to mow their own lawns. And what are we up to? Number 4? Oh, sorry, I've gone through number 4. Number 5 was the Greytown space. Yet again, it came up that we really would like the Featherston Town Centre to be completed before any more upgrades are done around the vicinity, even though we do support the pump track. We were looking at the social housing, and we feel that the rate of inflation should be the only rate that the housing costs go up, or the rental costs, or whatever you call them. Especially, there's a big problem with accommodation for workers, and the council needs to address, if we are going to have work gangs coming in, that the people who are managing these gangs are respectful of their workers, but also the conditions with which they are living are acceptable.
Thank you, Claire. Fortunately, we have no time for questions. But Claire, thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
I have submission number 386, Daniel Hawkins. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, councillors. Just putting across a few points I have. I've been a ratepayer since 2004, both residential and rural, and having recently in the past couple of years moved out to the rural sector and part owner in a transport company, I noticed the roading around the South Wairarapa is due to greater numbers in both tourism and Wairarapa being such a busy place. Now the roads are getting used more. They are an unsafe place. We live approximately 15 k's up Roycock Road, and that straight there you can get up to 100 k's along there on gravel. The grader will come in, turn it into a soup pit, and then go away. By the end of the day, that road's not very good anymore. So yeah, so if we aren't going to carry on tar sealing our areas, then we are going to have safety issues and issues for as long as we say, like the lady before me was talking about those critical winding bits. People have to be aware that gravel roads and country roads are dangerous for sure, but we have to be seen to be making sure we are doing our best to keep the roads safe. And our road, as in my submission, is very unsafe, very potholy. You go down there and you see people drive down the middle of the road because they're scared to go off the side because they're very corrugated. And that's like all our rural areas, like White Rock, Tora. Cape Palace is not bad now because that's been tar sealed, but I do think that it seriously needs to be considered that we need to take that on board. As per the other things with the affordable water package, affordable, that might be a good idea, but as a business option, doing things affordably, being a business owner doesn't always work best. In the long run, will probably cost us more. So that's my residential side put forward. I think we should do it properly, make sure it's sustainable, make sure it's best for our town. I don't have anything to do with the town anymore, I live out, but I think it's best for our town, having born and bred Martinborough. The verms, but as I say, I was residential. I had to mow my one all the time, so it's only a couple of bucks, so I don't really see the point in that. And recycling, it'll be great. I don't know why you want to get rid of it. Maybe it's not efficient enough, but yeah, I think we need more recycling if that's the green, clean green we're trying to have. Thank you.
Right. Councillor, you've got questions? Yeah.
Daniel, on the rural roading, I just picked up, you said that the issue isn't only just the Ruacock Road, you're talking the White Rock Tora Road and the Tora Road, so yeah. So you're not opposed to be spent on any area that really needs it at the time?
No, but on that roading one, we had a 3-stage plan for our Ruacock Road, which I was aware of was full steam ahead. We had a bit of a stop for a couple of months and then nothing happened. And then I only got wind of this, so I put my hand up to say 5 cents.
Cheers.
Yep. Okay.
Then, do you think some signage on the road would help in the interim till it can be sealed?
Oh, definitely signage would help, yeah.
And what speed limit do you actually physically think that road would be best at?
I wouldn't go over 70. I can't go down there. I can only get only 30, 40 k's.
So
After about 3 days, that road's, you cannot go over there. That's too dangerous.
Yeah, so a 30k speed limit on it?
Oh, 30 k's probably a bit extravagant, but 70 k's people use it as a target. But
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. How do you think, rural, and you're a transport business, is a blanket speed limit of 60 or 70? Do you think that's a positive move or a negative move?
I think if the road conditions are bad, yeah, that is something. They've done it on the Balance Hill. Our trucks go over there, they've got a 60 k's. If you look on Google Maps, it says 100. But it's 60k signage everywhere. It's down to the drop of the eyes. The same would apply to a track in Rimatuckers, I think. They're the same. Rimatuckers people go far too fast. They take the centre line. Bit off task, but yeah. People just have to sense me.
Fair comment.
Great. Thank you very much for your submission. Thank you for your time. Can we do it on time again, Beverly? Yeah. So this is submission 399.
Yep.
And Bev, I'm sure that you're very familiar with council processes.
Yep. Morning, thank you, Worship, councillors and others. You've had my submissions, my PA put them in, but I've just got a couple of more. I want to stop you from procrastinating. Either take on water, the roading, or the sewage. Do one and do the whole 3 towns. Now, this has been going on since about 1994, and every year it's crept out, and now we're 2021. So I'll leave it with that with you. Climate change. Are you up with the insurances? Because we're about to have another 1 in 150, a 50 or a 1 in 100 from the east. It's starting now with the king tides coming in, and I assure you when they come, there'll be 2 houses wiped out in Martinborough. And also repairs to the Tora Bridge. I don't know whether any of your councillors have been out there, but any minute now, that guy that just left before me, he could go through it because all the stuff's all lifting off and all the boards are rotten. I know that you've put new piles and all the rest of it. I also know that you put rails down the road further at tyres broke, which didn't need it. But, you know, have a look at that bridge. And what else have I got? Also, the titty baiting of the square. Have you thought about the firemen? Because there is firemen that live south. Now, how are they going to get round the square the quickest route possible, rather than going around Tom Lawson's corner, along Court Street, cross over the intersection and around to the fire station? Have you thought about that when you start titivating? That's one thing I want to know. And that's all I've got to say, but cut out procrastinating. Get on with the job.
Thank you, Peter.
I've listened to many of these. So, yeah.
You tiptoed off of the LTP and into other areas. And more systematic things there.
Pardon?
We have got a bit of a list there, but if you could provide us with that list that is.
In
addition.
I'll get my PA to type it out. She'll have it tomorrow.
Do you have any questions of?
She's coming tomorrow.
Yes.
Have you got any questions of Peter?
Just,
I just got one.
Yep.
So you asked for an 8-day, 7-day week recycling. So if you look at Carterton, for example,
Yep.
it's much reduced hours. Thinking about costs, do you think we actually need that?
well, with the amount of rubbish that gets put on the road, yes, sometimes we do. Yeah. Yeah. But that's immaterial. You can put that in the back basket or in the back basket. That's all I've got to say. But thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Bev.
Pleasure as always.
Just stop titivating.
Yeah.
We've just got to stop titivating.
That's right.
Thanks, Bev.
Thanks to Peter for running ahead of schedule. I don't know if Ray Harrison is here. I wanted to.
He is.
Copy it. I'm sure you're familiar with the format, Gray, so you'll get a knock of the gavel in 4 minutes. And please do leave time for questions.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioner, Mayor and councillors. I'm a part-time Greytown resident, but to be full-time. But just before I start, I just want to say that I'm very much in favour of youth activities in the South Wairarapa. I'm president of the Greytown Soaring Centre, and I'm also a gliding instructor at Papua. And we've done an amazing job at Kiruru College and Youth Glide in the Wairarapa and in New Zealand. In fact, our gliding club now is the largest youth glide membership in all of New Zealand, probably Australia. But back to the skate park and my submission. I'm against the skate park down at Pier Street. And the reason for that is to do with having skate parks built in residential neighbourhoods. They are noisy. I live next to one at the moment in Wellington, down Schaefer's, and it's the noise of the skateboards and the scooters when they flip them or they crash them. It's a continual noise, and it's not so bad in a built-up area like Wellington where you've got background noise, wind, cars going past. But when in the still of the evening, or particularly in Greytown, that the wind like Wellington has. I can imagine down there will be extremely noisy, and particularly for the residents down at Taurua Junction. Now, I'm going to be living in Taurua Junction when I move up, and so I don't want to be accused of NIMBYism, but when I heard the skate park was going there, I thought, oh no, why there? There must be other areas in Greytown that would be better suited away from residential areas, like all the other skate parks around our region. The other thing I'm worried about too is the cost. That Pier Street site is a very small site. If you look at the just recently stuff yesterday, the Maidstone Max, which is just reopened, that cost them $3.8 million. $1 million set aside for this park in Pier Street. Is that enough money? And where and to build that, and also to provide car parking, as well as the increased traffic that will be going down Pier Street from the 55 residential sections that are all being pre-sold. How's this all going to work? I just don't see it's going to be a large enough site. That's why I think more investigation needs to go into it. I also want to know if that, as I said before, the budget is enough, and if it's not enough, who's funding it? And who's going to pay for the ongoing maintenance and repairs, potential graffiti and everything else that unfortunately does come with those parks time to time? Is it the Greytown Rate Park? How's that be fun? So those are my questions. I'd just like the council to please reconsider all this. I think more work needs to go into it. More consultation needs to go to the residents, the future residents of Taurua Junction. Most of those people are not people from within our district. They're from Wellington and outside, and who wouldn't have a clue that the skate park has been proposed next door to them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Councillor Jeremy. Yeah.
I've got two for you. Thanks, Greg. Could you briefly describe, in your words, the type of noise that you think comes from the skate park you live next door to?
It's the it's when they flip the skate park, skateboards. You've probably seen the kids. They're pretty clever how they can turn their skateboard, lift them up with their feet, and turn them over. That's the constant crashing and banging that on the tips of the boards and on some of the wheels that they have. And you know, most of the time the kids are down there after school or on the weekends. Or in the evenings. And that's when we're all trying to enjoy. That's what we're all wanting to have, is quiet enjoyment. Because it's the peak time that people are out.
You have another question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to lead you down a path here. How would you describe the noise differently from a skate park to a more traditional park? If there was a traditional park there, I'm talking about
Like playground.
Like a playground.
When you're not getting the constant bang, bang, bang that you get with scooters and skateboards. If you had a flying fox or swings or roundabouts, you don't get noise. You'll have kids laughing and yelling from time to time. But it's not like you have to go to a skate park.
It's not an
and hear
impactful
it.
noise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor, any other questions? Yes.
Is there a closing time in the skate park that's next door?
No, it's open all the time. But Shapers Skate Park is open 24/7. You can go across the New World at midnight, and it's in full swing.
I'm going to make the unusual one. We can, but actually we actually have reached out in, but just quickly, Pam.
Could I just, you talked about the size, the area not big enough. Can you give me an idea of what size the skate park is that's next door to you at the moment?
Yes, the Shapers Skate Park is much larger than the site of Pier Street.
Yeah.
It's about twice as big, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
And of course, there is a lot of car parking in the area.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Maidstone one, I think, is about 4 times bigger.
Yes, yes. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So we're well and truly ahead of ourselves. We have Jan Davidson next 4:40, which hasn't arrived, so we'll just stand down for 5 minutes.
We're Marco now, aren't we? Yeah.
Who's got sitting? Sid, have you got a submission you want to pop up to us? Do we have Jan here? Jan, how are you? Please take this. Councillors, you can resume your seat. Sorry, Jan, we were running just a bit ahead of time there, so we were just stopping for a chit chat. Welcome. You have 5 minutes. We'll give you a gavel there, and we've got a minute to go. We do have your submission in front of us, so if you can leave time for questions.
Sure. Now, the submission is, well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity. I'm grateful. I feel for you sitting here all day listening to us all, but still, these things are important. My submission is on behalf of some forest and bird members and others who are interested in biodiversity and conservation in our area. You've got my submission in front of you, but this morning I'd like to focus on one aspect of it only, and that's the aspect that threatens our future, and that's water. Fundamental to the well-being of everybody, all the people, flora, fauna, the lot, is water, and we need more of it, and we need to manage it better. The long-term plan for the District Council mentions actions in the area of water supply, but I'd like to suggest to you that clear and concrete actions in the area of water demand, managing demand better, is very desirable, and it's readily achievable actually. Back in 2009, Kapiti Coast District Council had the lowest water security of any council in their region. They had several years of water shortages and faced a worsening situation. They introduced several measures for managing water demand, that is the usage of water. Every new house built from 2009 on has had to have its own tanks for capturing rainwater for drinking water. There is also provision for installing grey water tanks so that houses can have a smaller water tank, but also capture the grey water to use for the garden. And in addition to all that, they installed water meters. That was the demand side of water, what they did. On the supply side of water, they discovered that 28% of their water was escaping from the system. And when they investigated further, they found that most of that leakage was on private property, but there was still a significant amount on council. So anyway, they set about doing a major repair project for council stuff, and the installation of meters on individual properties meant that householders became aware that they were paying for water that was seeping. And I'm assuming from that, though I don't know, that they have charged for all water and not just water until a limit is reached. So the other thing they did on the supply side of water was they invested money in capturing excess water when the floods, rivers were high, and injecting that water into their existing bores. So it's a bit like the oil and gas industry, where they get extra gas, they pump it back down again for the later day. This they did with water, and that's been effective for them as well. I don't think they've had to use their bores at all. Anyway, all these actions took several years to implement, and it's been a long, slow process of its improvement. But now, Kapiti has the highest water security of any council in the region. So that's quite dramatic turnaround in, 12 years? Yeah. And I think we can do this too in South Wairarapa. We must have high water insecurity here. So, yeah. We could change that and become the best in class instead of doing what we're doing at the moment. So I really have to urge the council to do something about this, because A, not only is it your responsibility, the water system, but you're the only ones who can do anything about it. Individual action by householders will achieve something, but you need to take the broader actions to make sure that there is as a community, we expect water to be well managed, and we expect to be without it. So I would love to see a South Wairarapa that's secure in its water. I would love to see a South Wairarapa that can, because of that, can attract further business, farming, whatever we want to attract, and give that infrastructure security, if you like, to the region. That's it.
I would open up to councillors, but if I could ask the first one. So As you know, we already have metering, and in this long-term plan, I'm proposing to go to electronic metering. And we also have the proposal of the long-term plan changes for water, new builds having a requirement for water storage. How do you think the Wairarapa water resilience strategy fits into what you're talking about?
Well, it's very similar, but when I read it, I've got a feeling of long-term down there, somewhere happening over there.
Right.
Can't do that. These things take.
That's what me.
We can't wait.
Yeah.
We've got a problem that's big now. Yeah. So
Okay.
we just need to bring the long-term plan forward and get it into the planning earlier. Yeah.
Councillors, any other questions?
I've just got one question. So do you think people would be happy not to have a limit on water so that they would do this equity model?
Yeah. If that is, you mean, say to all householders, you have to pay for water. It can't be palatable. No. But I would look to other examples where they've done it around the country, councils have done it, and just see how they managed it, see what communications then they entered into, and then be brave and go and do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Guys, we have a slight break for a cup of tea, and we'll get back with come back with Bruce Farley for his submission. During the meeting.
That 5 metre little laneway that comes out to Kempton Street, of course, I envisage that as being a perfect pedestrian and cyclist access from that block somewhere in the future, and taking the pressure off the Yule Grove access. Again, as I've outlined in there, we've done the soil testing for our subdivision completely, because this is an old berry fruit farm, and it's completely clean, so that 3.6 hectares is suitable for anything in the future. So again, I'll reiterate that we don't intend to do anything with it at this stage, but we're just trying to get our ducks in the row and sort of fit in with your spatial plan vision, which I again applaud. So that's pretty much it for me on that one.
Excellent. Do we want to separate this and ask questions at the end, or carry on with your long-term plan submission as well?
Okay. So a long-term plan submission, again, you've had the submission placed before you in a bit of an outline of the grievance that we sort of had there. So I won't revisit that, but effectively the crux of the matter is that I sort of feel that your fees should be equitable and fair and justified as well. And I felt that this circumstance with the applying for a variation to the resource consent was a little bit extortive, to be honest. If you're willing to take down a note, I'll just ask you to note some figures down. Your fees for application for resource consent was $1,755, and your variation fee on your schedule is $1,755. And you list any extra hours at $148 an hour. By comparison, Carterton's application fee is $1,000, and their fee for a variation is $150 for a minor, up to $350. They list at $90 an hour above 5 hours spent on it. And Marsden District Council is $950 application fee, and again $150 to $350 for a variation, and $148 an hour. I'll reiterate that your fee schedule states in relation to plan changes, and I quote, all fees are a deposit only where the costs for processing an application exceed the fee deposit, the additional cost will be payable. And I don't think that's an unreasonable statement to make. And subsequently below that, you list $148 an hour. And below that, the variation fees are listed. What I struggle to accept is that the average variation processing will take as much time and consideration as the initial consent application. Your fee for a variation is the same cost as the initial consent application. Surely most of the work has been done and decisions made and issues identified, and a variation is simply just a small portion of that. Yet your fees are exactly the same. Importantly though, you reserve the right to charge for extra time. So it's only fair then that a partial refund should be available for unused funds if you haven't spent $1,755 in the process. So, and if you're calculating the time spent to do the extra charge, then you know exactly how much time you've spent if you've underspent. So it's not like there's any more work and you're saying, oh, hold on, we've only spent half of this $1,755, let's give the people the other bit back. And I do have evidence of council doing that, but I'm not going to bother with that today. The other option, of course, is for you to reduce your initial deposit in the example of what Cardigan has, a smaller deposit, and then simply charge over this accordingly if necessary. This situation could be applicable in other areas of your fees as well. I haven't looked anywhere else, but this may be the only situation where you have this, extortive practice. In closing, I just say that at a time when all of New Zealand is struggling with the Resource Management Act processes and the cost to free up land and solving this housing crisis, surely as local authority, you need to be doing your bit to ease these costs. So the cost like this really just gets passed on to the consumer, and for us personally as a family, the fact that we've spent $2,000 more to get to the same place as it would have cost us in Cardigan, we've just had to suck that up as a family for what we've gone through. So that's pretty much it for me on that one, and I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to have that.
Thank you, Bruce. Very short and sharp. Councillors, do you have any questions?
I think it's always a good sign. Means you're not interested, or it's very clear.
Good morning. The 3.6 hectares, I'm assuming that's class 1 land.
Not familiar with what a class 1 land is, sorry, Garrett. So,
ideal for planting.
Again,
Top producing.
oh, it is producing quality land that we could be growing cabbages on, but
yeah, I'm just wondering if that's why it was sort of taken off originally. I don't know.
Well, it would have originally been within the Greytown borough, but what rates were paid on it or what it was zoned as, I don't know. As a berry fruit farm, it's always been either a berry fruit farm. It's only had a residence on it for 40 odd years, so.
Yeah, because it's on the map, it looks like it's been taken out. I wonder if that was the reason why that was.
That may never have been in. I don't know. You have to hunt back, but
yeah. Okay.
Well,
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
So we are well ahead of time, but I don't know, Patrice, whether you would like to come through. We have, this is submission number 458. Additionally, we have Zachary, Ethan and Daniel from Greytown School as part of the long-term plan submission. Patrice. Everyone, we've got 5 minutes. We'll give you a bang of the gavel with a minute to go. And we have got your submission in front of us, so we can ask questions. That would be fantastic. If you could leave us there.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for allowing us to come and present our opinions on the proposed skate park and playground area for Greytown. My name is Zachary Henderson and I am the head boy of Greytown School.
Hi, my name is David Hoshett and I'm year 8 of Greytown School.
Hi, my name is Eden Hunter and I'm year 6 of Greytown School.
And hi, I'm Patrice Connor, the principal of Greytown School, and I'm here to support you.
Together we would like to share with you why we believe your council should invest their money into the skate park and playground proposed at Governor's Green site in Bay.
The schools in Greytown continue to grow. Our school has increased by 25% in the last 4 years alone and is projected to grow even more. We are starting the process of building new classrooms, so our future school roll will be 530. That is a lot of kids and does not even take into consideration the 670 kids at Kiranui College, which is growing as well. Currently, Greytown kids only have a small playground on Kurtawhiti Street, and in summer, the swimming pools provided by the council to have fun at. As a result, children often have to travel to Martinborough, Featherston, Cardigan, and Wellington to have enjoyment in outdoor activities. And this only happens if parents are available or kids are old enough to go on the bus. This also means that some kids ride down the main street and do not take the best choices, which annoys residents and tourists visiting our beautiful town.
We believe that the skate park and the playground will make a significant difference to our community. Here are some of our reasons why we think you should invest in this area. We wouldn't have to travel to Munro, Featherston, Carlton, and Masterton. It will give children and families of all ages more equipment and chances to play. It will enable children to play in a safe environment with their friends. It is safer to skate at the park than on the road or other people's property. And it will enable children to meet new people with similar interests, e.g. basketball, scootering, skateboard, and etc.
More space as we won't all be a carefree street playground. It will decrease crime and antisocial behaviour because people will have something to do that is focused and a common interest that many children enjoy. They all can share. It will help parents of older children to leave them in a safe place while they use the dog park and bike trail. It will increase children's fitness, ability to take risks, encourage them to spend more time outside.
And it will encourage children to try new hobbies they may have not thought of. It will encourage children to take risks in a secure environment, e.g. for skateboarding, this could be going down holes, learning new tricks like jumps, tailwhips, fast swings, etc. Younger children could learn these tricks from older children, and older children could teach the younger children. And it would encourage other families and tourists to come to Greytown, which means local businesses would thrive as they spend more money.
We suppose our school had asked 370 kids the following questions. How many of you would use the skate park and playground if it was built? The answer is 334 kids, which is 95% of all of our students would use it. Should the South Waitanapa Council invest money towards this progress? The answer is 100%.
In summary, we all believe that the proposed skate park and playground is a great idea, and we fully support it, and we want you as our council to invest in this project.
Well done, well done, yeah.
So I'm going to take the extraordinary step of actually allowing you to go past the 5 minutes, given that it's so great to hear a youth voice here and we're running ahead of time as well. So if I could possibly, councillors, make the first question. We're looking at doing a skate park around Governor's Green at the end of Cotton Street. How important or dangerous is it crossing State Highway 2 to access that from your school?
Depending on where you cross, we have a crossing by the library, crossing outside near the north end of Greytown, but we also have one right in front of our school at Stilton Park. So crossing the state highway should be easy unless you go further along to where Connolly is or further on to crossing at the gas station, which I don't think kids will be doing.
So you want us to probably look at improving that pedestrian crossing to allow access if we do go ahead with it?
Yes.
All right, guys, councillors. Yeah, Lee.
Great presentation. John, have you talked to your parents about the location of this?
Since I lived quite close, my parents were happy about that because I could just pretty much walk there, and they were happy that they could lead us there pretty much, and we could go do the rail trail and look at the dog park and stuff. Okay, so
yeah, my parents were really happy about where it would be positioned because it's not so far away from Greytown that not very many kids can access it. So it's quite close, kids can access it and they can have a fun time without disturbing too many neighbours, where if it was put somewhere else, it couldn't do that.
Any other questions, councillors? Guys, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Very good, kids.
Well done.
Alan, Mr. Rob, did you get a copy of their presentation?
Yeah, yes. Patrice, before we move on, we'll be able to get a written copy of your submission or sent through to us.
Would you like to see it?
Oh, I got it there, that's great. Thank you
very much, Trace. We are running ahead of time, but John Boone, are you available? Excellent. So this is John Boone from the Waihingi Action Group, submission number 444. Stella.
444.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, John.
Last time Waihingi Action Group came into this building, you awarded us the Citizen of the Year award. So
A great evening and well.
So I'm sure you know the process. I'm sure you know the process, which is you've got 5 minutes. You've got it in front of us.
Yep.
It'd be great to have some question time.
So, okay, everybody, we're very close, very close to the end of a 4-year process. It's taken well over 12,000 hours of volunteer work, which is to create a river plan, the first ever anywhere integrated river plan for the Waihingi River and its surrounds. And so the purpose of this 5 minutes is simply to give you 6 bullet points to be aware of in terms of how you may want to think about how you're planning and planning for the long-term planning for the river and slipping plan hook together, integrate. There are some things you can take advantage of and things you probably need to be aware of. Just like school, you may want to take one of these. So I'll just quickly go through those bullet points and then we'll take questions. So the first one is to urge you as South Rock District Council to take advantage of the facility that's being created in and around the river. You have there a river that is spectacularly beautiful. It is the cleanest, most pristine level of water you can get. It is the cleanest, best river in the Wellington region. It is swimmable, it is kayakable. There will be amenities created along the river to picnic, to cycle, to play, to exercise, and to walk, and to observe nature, to fish. So there's this fabulous, huge facility for recreation and amenity that's going to be created over a number of years within walking distance of Greytown High Street, within cycling distance of everywhere. If you develop a land around Woodside, a settlement at Woodside will be on the doorstep of Woodside with the second side. There is a tremendous opportunity for you to hook your planning into exploiting this fabulous facility at virtually no cost to the South Rock District Council. And those are the kind of propositions you don't get every day. So that's the first point to make is please hook into it, understand how it can be used and exploited as part of your long-term plan. Second point is be aware that the long-term proposition for developing a satellite urban area, if you like, around Woodside rubs up against some seriously at-risk floodplain land. Okay, and again, we urge you to look into us. We'll take you through the detail of the plans and models and show you where maybe you should draw a line down the boundary and not develop within the risk area. The third point is to be aware that we all know you've had some recent problems with the town water supplies for Greytown and Felson that came out of the ball field alongside the river. That was a consequence of the way the river was being managed at the time. And we're taking steps to work with GWRC to address that at source. But we were sucking air into the bore heads, and that was because the river hadn't been managed in that stretch and had gone deep and narrow right next to the ball field, which had lowered the water table, which allowed air to go in through into the bore heads. So we just want you to be aware of that for the future. If you have that problem, then you need to look to how the river is being maintained, and again, hook into us with that process. We just want to advise that the long-term plan as far as flood protection is concerned is designed to protect the urban area from a 1 in 100 year flood plus climate change out to the year 2090, and rural dwellings from a 1 in 20 year flood, or a 5% flood as they call it, out to the year 2090, including climate change. So to do that, we've taken an extraordinary step, which is very modern in terms of river flood planning. We have stood well back from the river to put flood defences right next to the town, rather than right next to the river. That's changed the costs to the community from $10 million down to under $2 million. It allows the river to spread out and slow down naturally in the event of a flood. The flood defences will run along the edge of North Street and will run through farmland off Curtis Street. Probably 2 or 3 years till they get built. And let's say the cost is under $2 million. So that affects how people's properties will be protected. Though a lot of those properties are lifestyle blocks in the floodplain. And as the local authority, you need to be aware, we've connected with your planning team on the way through this, that what people do when, like me, they move over from the city and know nothing about urban living, get a lifestyle block and decide to move lumps of soil around, fill in dips, cut down lots of trees, you know, what people do. That will affect the flood behaviours of the floodplain. So you need as a council to have a way of managing the process of what people do on those blocks of land within the floodplain, because they could well change or invalidate the flood protection. And finally, you have a process by which you surface treat effluents from the Greytown sewage works on the land down near the river. And you need to be aware that you should look into GWRC and have a conversation with them about that, because there is a risk of contamination in the event of a flood. Okay, so those are the 6.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know about the plan, guys. The other 180 pages you can read it later.
John, thank you very much. We don't have time for questions. I'm encouraged that you are talking with our planning department, but I also would encourage you to come and possibly at a future council meeting, give us an update and give us a half-hour good robust conversation about what you're finding and your relationship with Greater Wellington and those plans, etc. I think it'd be very valuable.
Perhaps a tour as well, I think.
We'd love to do a walkover.
Yeah.
So just let us know when you want that.
Yep.
And we will organise it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
When there's no flood. Thanks, John.
Yes, guys.
John Whitbeck, is John here yet? John, fantastic. We are running ahead of time. Submission, Councillor.
Shall I sit here?
Yep, please. This is our submission 495. John, you've got 5 minutes. We'll give you a bang of a gavel at 4.
I'm going to read this out because it's too hard to remember. The council's preferred option to stop roading sealing will in fact go against new government requirements, especially in the case of rural subdivisions. Here is a quote from the new government requirements 2019 regarding public health and gravel roads. One of the specific outcomes of the framework is to protect people from exposure to harmful pollution from the transport system, end quote. It is a known fact that communities that are exposed to excessive dust are at risk of health problems. The unsealed road outside the 3-year-old Morrison subdivision at Ruakok Platoon has never been sealed, even after a $30,000 roading contribution. There are 5 families living there being covered in dust on a daily basis. This will inevitably lead to health problems. The council has failed to achieve the government requirements and needs to rectify this area immediately by sealing the Morrison subdivision frontage. As well as the health issue, there is a real risk of the region losing the Starfield Observatory complex that is situated within the Morrison subdivision. As the owner of Starfield, I have given my word to the societies and individuals that have heavily invested in infrastructure at the site that the dust problem would be taken care of by the council, who up until recently were committed to seal the 300 metres outside the Morrison subdivision from as long as 3 years ago when it was on the priority list. This then changed to the 2nd year of the new 3-year plan, to now where council are seriously considering cancelling all rural sealing. Where is the integrity? A word that seems to be lost in today's society. Starfield represents cutting-edge technology with 6 observatories underway at various stages. The observatories are owned by both private individuals and societies and represent serious financial commitments to astronomy-based programs, including public outreach. Starfield has resource consent to operate astrotourism ventures and is considered a key player in the Dark Sky Reserve Tourism Initiative. The complex has very expensive and sensitive equipment that is adversely affected by dust. So if the rural sealing program, especially the second stage sealing of Ruacock Road, doesn't go ahead, it will threaten the very existence of the complex. The ongoing general condition of the road itself is appalling, with deep potholes, rocks and exposed clay. Considering there are many activities that promote our region taking place down the Ruacock Road, it defies belief that the council allow the road to continue unsealed. The activities are glowworm caves, the chasms, camping, glamping, vineyards, horse riding, trail bike riding, Ararangi Forest Park, Starfield Observatory Complex. Each one of these activities generate valuable tourism demand, which flows on to the local businesses, restaurants, accommodation, etc. What is the council doing to help these ventures? In this case, it is short-sighted in its thinking and needs to re-evaluate the needs of the area, especially roading. Personally, I am only asking for 300 metres of road to be sealed outside the Morrison subdivision to mitigate the dust issue and ensure the future of Starfield. But I also believe that the council had a prior commitment to finish the planned sealing of the Ruacock and Petuna Road to stages 2 and 3. Thank you. Any questions?
Right, councillors, do you have any questions? John? Yeah, Rebecca.
Hi, John. Thanks for your submission. Just really interested in Starfield Observatory. So, obviously, Dark Sky Reserve has been applied for. There's a lot going on in that space. How much is your observatory used, and is it throughout the year? Or is it specific times?
Every night, basically. And we have groups coming in on a monthly basis as well. It is a tourism venture that has been put on hold.
Because of the road condition?
It's because of, well, mainly because of COVID, and also because I've had difficulty with council over the years trying to get this thing built. So it's been an uphill battle till now. So this is, you know, if this dust problem is not settled, then that's the last straw for me.
John, great submission, thank you. People coming to your observatory, do they come in their individual cars, or are they coming by bus?
No, the tours were for buses, but that's on hold.
Yeah.
And the other people come by private cars.
Private cars. Okay. So approximately how many cars would you have on the road at night for a
we might have up to 20 people come a night, maybe 4 or 5 cars.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're still running ahead of time, but I don't know if Lee and Teresa are available here to speak. So, council submission 502. Welcome, you've got 5 minutes, and we'll give you a gavel back at 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for your time. I am a resident of the Ruacock Petuna Valley. Firstly, I'd like to thank the council for the awesome effort on sealing the road. The new section of seal is wider, safer, easier to drive and vastly improves the safety and durability of that part of the road. Widening it in its own is a huge difference to visibility and safety. The council has previously said it would seal 3 kilometres of road in stages, and I hope that commitment is still being followed through. In the long run, it saves you money and maintenance and is a win-win for all of us. Traffic on the road has increased with new subdivisions, Waikuku Lodge, hunters going up to the Haurangis, and the growing patronage of the Patuna Chasm. I'd like to note that the chasm has around about 9,000 visitors per year, so roughly 3,000 vehicles. These are mostly people that are not familiar with the road and driving on gravel surfaces. There have been accidents over the past 12 months where cars have driven off the gravel road. The condition of the unsealed road is about the worst I have ever seen it. Our family have lived out there for over 50 years. It is almost impossible to drive on the unsealed section without crossing the centre line, the centre of the road. This is due to excessive potholes and corrugations. This may be okay on the straights, but it's certainly not on the corners. I myself have personally been in a head-on accident with a driver from Wellington who was on the wrong side of the road. I do not want to ever be in that situation again, nor for anyone else to be. It was very, very traumatic. The unsealed road is also tough on our vehicles, and the corrugations and potholes give your car a real pounding, shortening the life of all of our vehicles. The new seal is fantastic and much appreciated, and in the interest of safety and well-being to the thousands of people now using this road, I'd love to see you continue with the good work and seal the next sections of the road. And speaking of good work, it would be nice to see the council keep up with regular maintenance. The water tables, the drains and the intrusive roadside vegetation is just not being done. The council has been quite good at doing this work over the years with regular maintenance seems to have dropped off the radar. Grading of the road is terrible because there's just no gravel to grade. The road surface is down to its base and in some parts there is only clay. Thank you for what you have already done. I hope you can stick to your promise of sealing our road, but at the very least, please look after what's already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Do we have any, councillors, do you have any questions for Lee? Thank you, there's some common themes.
Yeah, well then you should be taking that in because it's the gravel's in a terrible condition. Even now with it raining, there's just patches of clay everywhere.
Yeah.
So anyone in a front wheel, two-wheel drive car are just going to slide off the road. There's nothing to hold them on it. Yeah, and when the grader comes, there's no gravel on the sides to pull back in. It just doesn't exist.
With Lee's road, I've lived out there some 10 or 12 years, and I've seen at least 3, 4 or 5 vehicles off the road upside down. And it's one of these days, it's going to be a very nasty accident.
There has been, if I can just ask on a side matter, but there has been comments regarding speed limits on gravel roads. What do you think is an appropriate speed limit for the road?
You can't speed on it anyhow, so it doesn't make any difference.
I mean, it's one of those roads that, funny sort of way, it's so dangerous to say for those who know it, because you know where the bad bits are and you take extra care. But as Lee's pointed out, it's increasingly used for out of towners, for tourists who don't know the road. And you sort of get two sorts of people. You get people who come from Wellington who don't know how to drive a gravel road, do 20 kilometres down out there. Those who think they can do 200 kilometres down there. But it's not a reflex. It's something we'll go. I mean, I've had a scrape myself. I mean, I sideswiped someone. Two or something, you know, who was coming around the corner, just right on my side of the road. Don't let it go. You know. So, I mean, so far we've been lucky that's the word. But everybody was very pleased at that valley. That when the council came up with this 3-year plan, it would be a real shame to let it slide down, I think. Especially with, as the previous speaker said, you know, his venture has enormous potential for that country and in fact the whole mountain. I like to think we're at sea. We like mountain, but we don't like us.
Great. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next submission is, we're still running ahead of time, is Pete Roberts. I don't know if Pete's here yet. Pete, fantastic. This is submission 506. It's done. Pete, I'm sure you know how it goes by now, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. The submission is about the Greytown tip and the closure. And even though I've ticked the wrong tick box,
yeah, well, I'll see that.
you'll notice that the comments do start in capital letters, do not close it, and reminding you of, well, you were the ones who've given consent for housing, knowing that the tip was already there, so why is that now an issue? This idea of sending people to Featherstone, Martinborough or Carterton seems a bit disingenuous as to providing services for the people. I might remind you, Mr. Mayor, we've actually had quite a campaign about the banks closing facilities in rural areas, and yet you seem to be okay with doing the same for services that we provide from the council for where there is no alternative in the town. So how does that sit? And the kids' play area, again, well, you've had the submission from the children. You've questioned crossing State Highway 2. So have you investigated other areas that could be used for child's play area and skate park? Or have you got another site for the tip? That's it really. I won't bother mentioning berms because most people know their own berms. I'm probably the exception in my street. Everybody else seems to do it. I do not frequently, which means that, yes, the city care do come along and know it. There again on costs, do you charge or do you get charged by the number of berms that they cut? So in my streets, there's over 100. So say 80 berms don't have to be cut. You still pay city care for all 100, or just for the 20 they do cut. That's in my submission.
Right. Thank you. I'm very impressed that you ascribe the power that I have with regards to this. But this is a discussion, and this is why we asked the question as opposed to saying what we're looking. Councillors, do you have any questions? Yes, Leah.
Thanks for your submission. Just a quick question. If, in your view, if we were able to relocate the Greytown Recycling Centre to another area, would that be an option you support?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just basically don't remove it. Yeah. Because I mean, I know one of my friends who used to, and I'm from Featherstone, who used to actually use a wheelbarrow to take her green waste to the tip. If one or two people in Greytown did that, they'd have a long walk. Martinborough or Featherstone. So yes, that's yes. The relocation bit would be perfectly acceptable. It's just a closed facility. Yeah.
I've just got one more question. So, in your view, if people chose not to mow the berms, meaning they were unable, but they chose not to. Yeah. Would you consider it acceptable to be charged by the council?
But we are already charged for. I did have a discussion with Wellington Water a few years ago, where we got a notice in the Phoenix and in week to say that we were responsible for the berms. And so I asked whether that was okay if I created a little flower bed or vegetable plot there, to be told that no, you can't, because it's not actually your responsibility. So it is our responsibility, and as far as I know, that hasn't changed. So, and there is part of the rates which goes towards berms. So I would be twice. Some people do pay twice because they get somebody to mow their berms for them. So they're already paying twice, once for the council and once for the private contractor.
I think it's charged on the hours used as opposed to the number of berms responsible.
Yeah, oh, that's
so you're not
that's enough.
Here you go, councillors. Any other questions?
Just a very brief one.
Yeah, sure.
It's about booms actually. There is a movement of no boom mowing, and it's actually about creating biodiversity. So your idea about not mowing your boom, was that more about creating biodiversity?
Yeah, potentially using it for something
productive.
That's the idea. It's quite a wide berm.
So
yes,
would you be in favour of booms that look like that then?
Well, yes, I would be. I did actually do a cavity at one time, and the council at the time was actually, they didn't, I don't think it was actually official, but they did allow people into to do that, and I think it was particularly if I got Greenwood Road. Council backed for doing it. It wasn't their policy to plan it.
That's good.
It wasn't in writing. So yes, that would, yes, I'm sure there are a few people around who would like to do that.
That's a good step. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. We now have Joe Woodcock with a Joe, fantastic. This is submission number 545. Joe, you've got 5 minutes. We'll give you a gavel bang at 4 minutes. We've got your submission in front of us, so if you leave time for a few questions, will be fantastic.
Is that the one with the pictures that I sent through as well?
I've got the pictures here.
No,
I didn't look on the website.
no, I didn't get the pictures on.
These are the multicoloured big bins and.
Yeah, I have.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I sent through to Rebecca, Lee and Alistair, because I couldn't send through to the submission.
Oh,
You know, I thought it on, it should have been.
It's fine. Yeah, carry on.
So my submission was to do with the recycling centre. Basically what I was proposing that if it has to be closed, utilised better as council land. My suggestion was copying what Sydney do, which is the closed-in recycling, like the pictures that I sent through, the examples, and they used all throughout New Zealand as well, which would make a tidier space. My idea would probably maybe have another one somewhere else in town, so you're limiting the congestion that's going down Cotter Street and that whole area. They also do reverse vending machines, so they get paid to recycle, which I love that idea. I can imagine lots of young people wanting to collect bottles and get paid 10 cents for them, you know, and have that youth coming through wanting to recycle more. So they were the options. But I thought having one of those recycling stations there with car parking. At the moment, there's probably 4 car parks that aren't tar sealed or lined for the dog park. If you use a rail trail, we're lucky if maybe 1 car park here. So the idea, I thought, with increased tourism happening, with the cycleway and the suspension bridge happening, that potentially you could make that whole area into a car park, enough space for a bus with the tourism, the bus, people coming with cycles on the back, to then cycle that whole way through there, as well as the recycling centre. It would hopefully alleviate the problem with increased pests in that urban area with the organic waste and things like that. Better use of the land, and hopefully traffic will lessen due to the population increase. The only thing with doing that, we have a change in a flow and effect, is that a lot of elderly like to take their green waste down there. So my suggestion would be, like Wellington do it, they have a green waste wheelie bin at the doorstep. So that means the elderly aren't hopping in the car to drive down and reducing the traffic. It's the as an agent, they probably haven't got access to a vehicle anymore, and they can just put it on the driveway. And I'd rather not travel to Featherston. I'm rural, so I don't have access to recycling. I have to drive into town to recycle, and I just think that would be much better to have it in town. That was
Great. Councillors, do you have any questions? Joe?
I just one I picked up on, Jay. I never thought of as maybe having more recycling spots in town. You know, we all talk about having one, and the main road being the divide, there may be an opportunity to have 2. It's something we could think about.
especially if it's closed in one, you know, it's tidier, and you could have one somewhere else that people as they're driving past, it just, so you're stopping so much congestion. I mean, I know the town seems small, but you know, when you have to open up that recycling centre on the Tuesdays and the Saturdays and Sundays, it is quite busy. There are a lot of traffic going through there. I don't know if you've done one of those things that go over tell you how much traffic's going in and out, but if you could even halve it, it's smarter. Yeah.
2 sides might do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for a very positive.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
The next one, Tim Smith. I don't know if Tim's here yet. If he's not, then we'll just hang fire because we are running 7 minutes ahead. So, until Tim arrives, we'll just have a bit of a stand down for 5 minutes. Hopefully you're okay with that. Number 40.
So do I.
Spatial plan 40. It's there.
Oh, sorry. And they don't, sorry, so they just kind of use recycling houses where they start to do stuff. My thinking about it is how often, sorry, it's true, how often we run the service so that stuff's in the home. Here's an example of 4 years of green compost. And it is absolutely hideous when the vehicle comes and collects it. The slug that comes off there is really pleasant. It's and it smells. It's actually a disease risk as well. So I think we have to do a lot of education around that for people that if you're going to put green waste
I'm trying to decide what
That's just wondering, I was reading this. Oh, no, that's getting on.
Which the one on each side.
I was reading.
I don't know. It could be spots on me. Yeah.
The comments that he was making.
Yeah, I guess you would incorporate it in where you decide to go with this spatial plan. Maybe an opportunity off Hawaii Road.
Oh, did we make it?
I don't know.
Community big issues with it.
Well, that's the point, yeah. But they haven't got far to go, and it's not a congested road down there. The Greytown is, getting across the main road for a start to the house all at times.
I mean, I remember the days when you didn't get Coke bottles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No.
They were just talking about just taking down the old ones. And the cladding that was on the outside of that old BNZ building is now cladding on the children's hospital.
So a proper reuse project.
A proper reuse. And the rubble, they've crushed that into aggregate.
And the use it as a matrix for.
Yeah, and the aggregate is a higher quality than the aggregate you get out of the river.
Yeah, which is really important as a one, because we have to river management aggregate. There's a real expense with pulling it out of the river, but we've got to make it which we can re-engineer and use. That's what we should be doing.
What they're doing is that where people are doing demolition and it's concrete, they're actually buying that to turn it into aggregate. And it's absolutely huge. We're going to go and do a site visit. But I was absolutely glad to see the outside of the children's hospital with this.
I bet.
Yeah. To his next being said that's really true.
Yeah. Alex, sorry, Alex, when are we reconvening? Sorry. 3 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
close it down. That's a scribble on it, turn upside down. Yeah.
We've lost two kids. I think
And we've, in the district, sorry, in the spatial plan, we've talked all about master planning. Are you familiar with that? And how do you think that works within what you're trying to see come out?
I don't know how master planning works, so.
Okay.
I think that it's been really well touched on. Though,
Yeah,
hasn't it?
yeah, you certainly raised the concerns that we've already.
Yeah, you're actually talking about the use of the land and not prescribing activity on it, like a minimum, say 400 square metres, but it might be a 1500 square metre section, but it might have 4 dwellings on it that are double story with good green spaces. That's
Yeah, like it's clever urban development design and intensification, not thinking that the way Marlborough has been to date is like to get a house, you have a section, you put a house on it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think there are lots of still big lots around Marlborough. Intensification could be through clever urban intensification rather than subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everywhere. Yeah, like I'm not saying we should have a road, you drive and have a lot more, and you see that rest home, and it's like 90 or 100 houses look the same, but that's not what I'm referring to. But I'm saying on 3 or 4 houses on, I think it brings a lot, well designed with common space. Yep. It's could be additive to, because also buyers in Marlborough are often second homes. So they to get away with having some to maintain their own gardens, their own shared space.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
See you, Tim.
Do we have digital seniors here? Nope, in person. Sarah, is it?
Hi everybody, I'm Sarah. Yeah, we've also got Kathy who's joining us on Zoom.
We just can't quite see her, but
okay.
At least you're here.
Yeah.
And as you know, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
And we'll give you a hammer knock at 4 minutes. Just
okay.
Do try and leave some time.
Sure thing, yeah. So I'm Sarah from Digital Seniors, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the impact that we've made so far in South Wairarapa. Across the Wairarapa, we've helped almost 3,000 seniors, and a third of that has been in Martinborough. That's with over 11,000 learning topics and 2,600 volunteer hours. And we've been helping them with a range of topics, the number one being wellbeing, and we've been also helping with COVID Tracer app and mobile data and online banking. Kathy's not here. I'm not sure what's happened with Zoom, but I've got her notes. So our vision is for collective community action for digital inclusion, which is the first of its kind in New Zealand. Demand for our services is growing rapidly. We have got proof that we can deliver. We collect a lot of data. So because we're growing so quickly, we have a 3-phase plan to ensure that we can help seniors across the Wairarapa. The first phase is partnering with Age Concern and Lisa from Positive Aging Strategy, which we've already done. And our next phase is partnering with council so that we can continue to meet the needs of our seniors. And then the third phase is to partner with corporates like banks and telcos, because we are actually helping them do their work. So what we wanted to talk about was the positive aging strategy and how digital seniors can actually help you deliver the positive aging strategy, because we touch on a number of the goals in the positive aging strategy. Of course, the main one being goal 2, communication and engagement. But as a matter of fact, for seniors to fully engage, that they need to be able to use online. So we can help facilitate the delivery of the positive aging strategy. And to do this, where our submission was for funding, and we're asking all of the Wairarapa councils for funding to deliver this, to help you deliver the positive aging strategy. And the funding would allow us to hire a part-time person to take care of the volunteers, recruitment, etc.
And that would mean that I myself would be able to work with you, supported by Kathy, our CEO, who unfortunately, I'm not sure what's happened with Zoom. But we would be able to, the heart of our partnership would be our agreed growth goals, delivering on the positive ageing strategy, and also our really valuable data that we collect and can share. So, yeah.
Excellent. By yourself. Yeah, sorry, carry on if you've got.
Yeah, any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Really, what are you actually asking for?
So what we're asking for in our submission is we're asking for funding from all three councils.
How much?
So that we can be more sustainable. So we're asking for, it was $10,000 each year for 3 years from South Wairarapa. And that's, yeah, that's so we can form a partnership to help you deliver on the positive ageing strategy.
How much you're asking for other councils?
Carterton's the same, and Masterton we're asking for 25,000.
And is it pro rata?
Great question.
Number of clients?
No, we're just asking for a lump sum. Yeah, but we've got a lot of, we collect a lot of data, so we could show you really clearly how many people we've helped and how we're helping, and we'd work on those goals together, so that we'd be helping you deliver on the positive ageing strategy.
And can you tell me, I think we've done an initiative with our libraries with and working with you, is that correct, or is that?
Yep, that's correct. So I've been meeting with Annette quite a lot. So yeah, we work in the Greytown Library, and we were going to work in the Featherston and Maryborough Library, but the Featherston Library was way too small. But yeah, I'm in communication with Annette a fair bit.
Yeah, so that while that's assisting, it's not really doing the call that you need to do.
No, there's such a need for it. I think the latest statistics came out of Citizens Advice Bureau was that 40% of seniors were digitally excluded.
Yeah.
So yeah, and especially with the ageing population, it's just not going to go away.
So you would like us to put this funding into our long-term plan as opposed to you coming through an MOU?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, and then we would work together to help deliver on the goals in the positive ageing strategy. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
We now have Marinda. This is on the LTP submission 557.
Hello, I'm Marinda Roberts. I'm a Featherston ratepayer. I'm here to talk about my objection to the Greytown Recycling Centre closure. My reasons for the objection lie in what you said in your consultation document, which is the traffic movements creating noise and odour, the visual effects, which are clearly unsightly and unattractive, the location, which is close to the rail trail, the dog park and residential properties, and in overall, it's not in keeping with their primary use of the area, which is residential and recreational. These are legitimate reasons, and I agree that it's in an unfortunate location and that has a negative impact on local residents. My objection is that you failed to mention the details of Featherston's location. And the Featherston Recycling Centre, as you know, is next to the swimming pool, the dog park and sports grounds, which are all widely used by the whole community. It's also in the middle of a residential area, including a new subdivision at the end of the street. So clearly the Featherston Centre is in just as unfortunate location and has an equally negative impact on local residents. The only reason I can come up with that you've made this proposal is that you're showing a clear preference for Greytown as the town which is prettier, wealthier and more popular. It's unacceptable to show preference for one town over another, and it's unacceptable to remove the negative impacts from one place by transferring them to another. You have a duty of care to all of your residents. I shouldn't have to be here demanding that you treat us equally. That principle should be enshrined into all of your decision making. Featherston needs your love, as you know, it should be a lot better. It has a lot of potential and we need your support to make it better, not undermine it with proposals like this. I really regret that you've made this proposal because I think it detracts from your integrity as a governing body. And at the very least, I would have expected you to provide unbiased information so people could make an informed decision. You didn't do that here. The data you've collected is worthless because you didn't provide enough information for people to understand the issue properly. by not giving any details of Finiston's location. I implore you to drop this proposal immediately. All the residents have an equal right to your care and protection, and I want you to prove to us that you value the residents of Featherston as highly as everywhere else.
Councillors, do you have any questions?
Could I just say, thanks, Belinda. I thought your submission was very articulate and well worded, and I thought your presentation was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perry. This is submission on the LTP 574.
Yeah.
Would the council be happy if I ask my mates from Warrior Voice to sit up here?
Certainly you can wish.
Still stick to our 10, my 10.
You can find 5 minutes.
Thank you. So, just in case I forget something.
Thank you.
So, just a quick stop. So, Perry, are you talking as yourself, or are you talking as Citizens' Voice?
Well, I signed the long-term plan application.
Yeah. That's fine.
So, just one. Does he want
Right, so Perry
to
can
be
have
there?
individual submission to the long-term plan 574.
Thank you. I went to and ticked, or did not tick the boxes which were found in the plan, the decision boxes. As you may have gathered from previous correspondence, I've had a fair bit to say and continue to speak about the need for a solution to heavy traffic problems in Featherston. I mentioned that in my long-term plan, and I've circulated to the mayor and ward councillors and so forth. That's under the other feedback section. I have circulated the NZTA's traffic counts, which I found very informative. In my day, I would have cracked the numbers, but that's the work for a transport engineer or two to see what, and I've asked NZTA what therefore is the outcome of that traffic count which they did 2 years ago, where I think it showed there was 16% increase in heavy traffic over the preceding 2 years, which is quite a lot. And as I have mentioned and discussed before with members, there is the heavy traffic on the hills, the heavy comes at heavy cost, which would damage the road and so forth. Far better if it went by rail. I have also mentioned in my long-term plan submission the and a proposal that Metlink or whoever's responsible for these sorts of things consider very much connecting the Wairarapa service, train service to the Upper Hutt system. Do you remember the good old days when we had rail cars? I believe there's still a few rail cars stacked away. But the rail car from Marston to Upper Hutt to connect to the Upper Hutt system more frequently may be a cheap and effective solution to transport to Wellington on the rail service, other than the limited amount of transport we have at the moment. I mean, everybody who commutes to Wellington or visits Wellington during the week would support another service or two in the mornings, because there is a bit of a gap there between the early morning start and the post 11 o'clock or whatever it is. There is a gap there, and if we could fill that gap at least cost, then the hook into the Upper Hutt service, I think, would be very, very useful. That's probably what else I've got to say would relate more to the spatial plans side of things. I've forgotten anything, guys. Wellington Waters, I've made a reference there to what's their costs and accountability and so forth.
Thank you, Perry. I'll start off with a question and then pass it to you. But Perry, what do you, as you know, the trains, say Highway 2 are run by two different entities. But what do you think of the regional transport strategies planned for increased commuter services through to Marsden, through to Featherston and the Wairarapa? Yeah, how do you think that dovetails into your opinions?
Yeah, I may not be up with the plan on that one, Your Worship. The regional traffic, you're referencing a particular plan, eh?
Yeah, it's with regards to hybrid carriages through to Featherston and double tracking of Featherston.
Right, yes. I didn't go into that in great detail because it would be a full-time job. I'm just saying the traffic transport engineers need to get on with it. It's been talked about for a very long time, and let's find the best solution and go for it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Do you have any questions of Ben? All good. Thank you. Now we will move straight on then, since everyone's sitting there, into the Water. There's 602 in the long-term plan and 207 in the spatial plan. So Warren, you have 10 minutes. And we'll give you a back 2 minutes and then a 1 minute since it's combined together.
Okay. First thing I want to talk about is was Wellington Water, and I wonder who on the council staff is representing the ratepayers' interest, keeping track of the appropriateness of the work and financial outcomes. It's been disappointing that there's been no financial evidence to say that Wellington Water is a better proposition than a shared service with Carlton going alone. It appears that from October to November, South Wairarapa District ratepayers will be stuck with Wellington Water forever, no going back. Whatever the outcome of the three waters, South Wairarapa District Council ratepayers will have no say. The say will be Wellington Waters in terms of our future. Second, rural roads. Having farmed for 25 years in the Whanganui Valley, I've great sympathy for the rural population and the benefits obtained from their annual rate payment. I support the points made by Mr. Rinford in a recent Wairarapa Times Age article. The ratepayers of South Wairarapa District Council benefit from income earned and spent locally by South Wairarapa farmers from fishing, viticulture, livestock and cropping. For this reason alone, the rural community needs to be supported by council where required. This includes upgrading and maintaining rural roads. The other point was about the recycling centre. As a resident of Cotter Street, I have no problem with the recycling centre. Opening 8 hours a week is a minimal disturbance. What I do object to is the recycling centre being used as a composting site. I don't believe the council has resource management consent to composting on site. Along with the composting of the smell, flies, rodents, and the opportunity for leachate to seep into the unconfined aquifer that the recycling centre sits on. The recycling centre needs to return to the operation as intended to do, the collection and removal of green waste on a regular basis. In terms of the skate park, I'd like to point out that the findings of the final report for the resource consent for Governor's Green states that South Wairarapa District Council retain an active watching brief on future developments in Pearce Street area in relation to traffic movements in Cotter Street. We now have Tara Junction, dog park, cycle trail, which is going to be busier with the cycle bridge connection with Featherston, and now the skateboard park. All this development and no council plan appears for handling the increased traffic flow in Cotter Street. Thank you.
Do you want to move straight on to your spatial plan? I've got some questions. We can ask those at the end.
The spatial plan, the thing I'd like to point out about that really, I think that we should be looking at that area to develop rather than some of the other areas. It should be a priority. And I'd like to see some sort of plan or competition go out worldwide, New Zealand perhaps, to providing some sort of sustainable little village with its own power supply, its water treatment.
So which area are you talking about?
I'm talking about Woodside.
Right, okay.
Woodside, that's and I think we should push on with it. I think it's close to rail link. The soils, gravel soils, have little benefit in terms of agriculture when you look at some of the other soils that we're looking at. And in that respect, I think the town moving towards the south is a better proposition as well. So I would go Woodside and then perhaps the Governor's Green type area. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the council move ahead with that. And if we have to go internationally, perhaps look at providing some sort of sustainable. I think doing the same thing, providing the same sort of infrastructure is not moving ahead. I think we've got to look to the future and have some sort of way of treating waste and providing power to people.
Excellent. Well, before we open up, if I can, Councillor, if you don't mind me asking a question. So, Warren, you support moving the composting but retaining the recycling where it sits currently in the Cottage Street?
Yes, I think initially it's never been a problem. I think the problem came when they started composting. And I wonder whether council actually has the resource consent to actually compost on that.
So do you think if you retain the, I think part of the issue that we've been hearing is traffic and volumes and no footpaths, and is it still, you still think it's a compatible land use for recycling?
Well, I think it was never a problem when it was taken away. It's only really become a problem when it was left there. Like I don't know what the arrangement was. I think probably every 2 months, something like that, the green waste was removed. So really,
that's good.
Yeah, for 8 hours a week, it seems a lot fairer for the community to have to track to either Featherston or Cartborough or wherever.
The next one is currently Woodside. We have noted in the spatial planners occurring within 20 to 30 years. We'd like that to be brought through to what?
I'd like to see that as a priority or work towards it. I think if we have to go internationally or competition or something like that, I think the council should do that.
Councillors. Yes, Pam.
Warren, you talked about the 8 hours that the site is currently open. Are you proposing that this is open?
Sorry.
Are you proposing that this recycling site is open longer than 8 hours a week for residents?
Well, I think that 8 hours, it hasn't been a problem. I don't think for us personally. I haven't heard anyone in the street sort of the long residents, where people have been there a long time, I haven't really complained about how it's been operating.
Okay, thank you.
Apart from people coming down the street with their rubbish and every time they go over the speed hump, rubbish drops off the street.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, 2 or 3 points. There's been comment already on location of the skate park. Do you think it's in the wrong place?
Personally, I think the park should be there, whether it should be a skate park. I think it's a good position with some sort of recreational area.
Yeah.
Whether it should be concreted in terms of a sort of a permanent skate park, I think it's up for debate, but I think it would make a nice sort of park green area for people living in the area and also Tarara Junction for swings or whatever. Something similar to what's down in the Memorial Park.
On the Woodside thing, you'll notice from the plan that we did a lot of it, not to end up with ribbon development from Greytown out there. But then would that encourage smaller size sections, which could be advantageous?
I don't like the idea of the corridor. I think we should just look at some sort of hamlet in round Woodside.
Yeah, that was the feeling. But yeah. And with smaller size sections.
Yes. I think there's a lot of people in Greytown. I know Mike, for example, who's living on a half-acre or whatever section, would prefer to live in a smaller area.
Yep.
And if it was sustainable and less cost to live there, it'd be ideal.
Yep.
Free up a house and down.
Sure.
Councillor Fox.
It's just clarification, Warren. So 8 hours is okay there's been no issues with the recycling station being open for that period of time. Would you be happy then if it was just disposal and collection of green waste, but not composting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear on that. That's good. Thank you.
How it did operate, it seemed to operate like that. For some reason, all of a sudden it turned into a composting site.
I have one other question, if I may quickly answer. You may not be able to answer it actually. Who's put the Judder bars on Cotter Street again? For they residents that put them on, or council that? Council. And was it for traffic calming to get to the recycling
Trying
station?
to deter, but it doesn't really deter.
It's actually become a nuisance.
Yeah, it has. Every 6 months, we've got to put our cars in for building.
So we're on with the developments going on there. Do you see this as a very good opportunity to potentially resolve the problems at Cotter Street with curb and channeling, and make it actually a useful street rather than the mud on the sides and the people go around them? And all that sort of.
Yeah, I think that was the outcome of that resource consent for Governor's Green, was that the council would keep a watching brief on what was happening and have some sort of plan for Cotter Street to handle and that was just the Taurus junction side of it that they were looking at. They weren't looking at it at that stage at a dog park, the skate park, and the increased traffic coming on the bike trail.
That's a good opportunity to try and resolve that. Fine.
Good to have a plan.
Yeah. Great. No, we are. That's it.
Point of clarification. So the main problem we have with the skate park is really traffic management of traffic.
And parking.
And parking.
Yeah.
And you see, have in your mind, could you see a resolution to that?
Well, I thought if we had a bollards, and I mean, we go back to the age-old sort of thing at the end of the street that allowed bikes and pedestrians to come through, which would also allow for increased parking on the other bit of the street for the park. So the sealed bit that went from sort of the bike trail down to Pierce Street could actually be used for parking as well.
So you're talking about Cotter Street, no exit?
Yes, like it was. Yeah.
Great. As we run out, so thank you very much. Now we'll move, stay seated. We'll the citizen voice, which is a joint submission for three of you. This is number 157.
Spatial plan. Yeah, thank you. As you noted, this is a joint comment, actually. I have asked Federated Farmers and didn't get a response in time for the ranking of our various agricultural pursuits. I did an economic paper a decade or so ago, which listed the fisheries were number 2 in New Zealand with Naui, and the dairy herd, sheep, etc. And to add to that, of course, there's been huge growth in horticulture in the Wairarapa. So, you know, I think it's important that we actually reflect that overall interest and the quality of country life, if we can call it that, and not focus too much on townships per se. Needs to be an understanding they are part of the big picture, and that's what our submission is actually. Well, I'm attempting to address it with my colleagues agree. The main point I want to make is relating to Featherston is, can we please get a resolution to the Squircle issue in your spatial plan? I occasionally hear that there is a solution reached or there is something coming, but I still don't know what's expected of that particular block of land. It's a key block of land. As I've mentioned before, I did have discussions with a former Chorus engineer that Chorus's easement, so-called, I've never seen it on a site plan, could have transmission system under the ground across the site would actually be shifted at minimum cost, something like $10,000 to $20,000, moved to the side of the block, which would substantially advance the value of the commercial Squircle circuit, whatever. I wondered whether council management had considered many of the Victoria University School of Design concepts for Featherston. There's some quite interesting concepts. That's sort of good background for people to look at. Guys want to contribute?
Yes, I'd like to support the submission you have in front of you. Make the point that 1 and 2 in this paper are about community well-being. And that means the whole district, not just the urban environments. I do believe we have not served our rural communities as well as we should have. In reference to the point about our significant communities, there are 22 such settlements in the district, quite apart from the 3 main towns. I do not think there's been adequate focus given to those, maybe Nawi, simply because it was seen as a destination and did have national roading funding to make sure that visitors from overseas, among others, could actually get there. Which brings me to the point about the failure to support the rural environment through adequate roading. Back in 1989, the first council of the new South Wairarapa district had a resolution to the effect that they would do 3 kilometres of sealing per year in order to address those fundamental issues of access and the quality of it, bearing in mind the productive capacity of the rural environment. I'm really, really disappointed. That's a regression by refusing to give attention to the rural and roading environment. That's a regression over 30 odd years.
Councillors, do you have any questions? Thank you very much for your submission. Quentin. This is Quentin Wilson. So a submission of a 635 in the LT, being 146 in the spatial. So Quentin, you have 10 minutes. We'll give you a bang at 2 minutes and a bang at 1 minute, just to make sure that we've got time for this.
Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I really care about the direction that this community goes in going forward. My background is that I was a chartered accountant in the commercial world, and my focus was on strategic investment decisions, and at times I had hundreds of people working with me. Why do people come to Margaret? I don't know if there's ever been a proper survey done of the tourists who come here, but a lot of this town is heavily focused on tourism. Quite a few of the shops only open 3 days a week, and quite a few of them are food-based, and they depend on the tourists. I would suggest, that the tourists come here because the environment is completely different to where they come from. Number one, there is not high volumes of traffic around. I think that's very important. And they come here for recreation, and they like the mix of rural and urban buildings and so on. And they like the town looking like it does. I've been lucky enough to travel quite a few places around the world and see where they've created new towns and left the old towns pretty much in their current state because they wanted to preserve the character of those towns. So I think going forward, it's very important that there aren't too many new houses in Martinborough or too close to the centre of Greytown, and even Featherston, much the same. Basically, the town is dependent upon tourism for quite some time. I think that at least we need to have corridors where the current environment is actually preserved fairly much. Doesn't have to be exactly as is. And I think the corridors that are really important are the ones that the tourists flock around. And so I think number one on the council's risk register should be loss of tourism, because if tourism was lost and the council loses water, the actual future of the council could even be called into question about whether it actually justifies its existence in the future. I think that it would be possible to implement something really radical as a suggestion here, and that would be to focus on Greytown railway station. So why there? Because it has transport, and it's always liable to have transport in the future. It has power and it has water. So at the moment, the Pahiatua wind farm is being extended all the way down over the Pahiatua track. There are hundreds of new pylons going up there. Land is cheap out at Greytown railway station. It would be possible to build a whole new town out there and focus most of the development out there. And that would have huge benefits in that you get to plan from scratch. So there's precedent overseas a lot. There's a lot of places where they've done that. Some of them they've mucked up terribly because they've gone with nuclear power and things like that. And the traditional old villages and that are still there, and they're very, very busy. But some of the newer towns are just about deserted because they focused on initially coal and then they focused on nuclear. Now that stuff's all been knocked down. And there is precedent in New Zealand. If you look at Rolleston, the subdivision down there is just amazing. And there is tons of government money poured into it, tons of it. So there's brand new motorways being built and the houses are yet to come. And there's quite a few of them there, but there are hundreds going up down there. And it's going to take years. You have to order a house about a year ahead down there if you want anything built, because the builders are simply tied up and they can't get the materials. So I'm suggesting that you think about trying to preserve the character of Martinborough as it is. Now, just switching to some of your operational longer-term suggestions, I don't believe that there is sufficient information disclosed on some of the proposals for anybody to make a sensible decision about whether those are wise and whether they fit in with the longer-term plan. And I think the spatial plan is the thing that really needs to be decided first, and then you think about what you really need for water. Now, I'm suggesting that the tourism dollar here is far more important than the issue about water being out for a few months or low. So if you lose the tourism dollar here, you could actually kill the town. And that's pretty much all I've got to say.
Good timing. Brendan's 2 minutes. We will open it up for questions, but if I could possibly ask, you mentioned corridors as a way of maintaining character leading to other developments. Is that the way you're picturing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that if you look at Oxford Street, for example, I like the idea of having green areas down beside the road so that the tourists can see that. But it doesn't have to go all the way back to Dublin Street. It could go 50 metres back or something. And so you can still achieve a density without sacrificing all the greenery.
You also mentioned that your concern about not having accurate figures, and you being an ACA then made me concerned. But did you go onto the council website and look at all the supporting documentation that is available, which is how we came up with the plan, or did you not see those there? It worries me that, yeah.
I'm afraid I haven't been particularly well. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, that's all good. Councillors, do you have any questions?
I think it's great.
Very thought-provoking submission.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, we have actually targeted a number of questions we've asked ourselves.
Exactly, it was interesting, Quentin, that you brought up what Warren Woodger just mentioned about having a worldwide competition to develop a satellite town. I mean, you said that in your submission that you see around the world how they've done it well, and maybe
yes,
that could be replicated here.
You could spend years travelling around talking to people about it. But if you were really interested at all in pursuing that sort of idea, the logical place to start would be Rolleston.
Oh, yeah. Right on time.
Right on time.
There is one final thing that I would like to add, and that is I've been very, very careful about very small lot sizes and small buildings.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in the central Auckland area, there are more than 1,000 empty apartments, and many of those have gone down in value by over 25% in the last 12 months. I can also tell you that many of those body corporates in those apartments won't allow their landlords to rent to wealthy beneficiaries or people that are financed by winds simply because of the damage and the trouble they've had with them in the past. And if you want those references, I can give you people to talk to about it. So I'd be very careful about small lot sizes that are too small and small apartments.
Great. Thank you very much, Quentin, for your submission.
Thank you
Very much, Quentin.
Oh, no, adjourn for lunch.
What about us?
Yeah, what about us?
You said you're adjourned for lunch. What about us?
Stay here.
What you? What you mean, all of this?